I had the corner office with the cityscape view, the designer wardrobe, the respect of my colleagues, all carefully curated pieces of the life I'd constructed. But sitting here at 3 a.m., staring at my bedroom ceiling for the fourth straight night, I realize how fragile that facade really is. The anxiety attack hit during yesterday's board meeting. Right in the middle of my presentation on quarterly projections, my chest constricted and the room started spinning. I somehow stumbled through the rest of the slides before excusing myself, barely making it to the bathroom before my breakfast made an unwelcome reappearance. Dr. Matthews called it acute stress response and wrote me a prescription for both anti-anxiety medication and 2 weeks of medical leave. Me, Samantha Wheeler, the woman who prided herself on never taking sick days. Now I'm here in my perfectly decorated apartment, feeling anything but perfect. The silence is deafening. I've tried everything: meditation apps, herbal tea, counting sheep. Sleep remains elusive, mocking me like the stack of unread emails accumulating on my phone. In desperation, I start going through old boxes in my closet, hoping the mindless task might tire me out. That's when I find it, Grandma Lily's Bible, its leather cover worn soft with use. I inherited it after she passed away last year, but like everything else from the memorial service, I'd packed it away with the intention of dealing with it later. The gold-leafed pages fall open to Psalm 46. Grandma's handwriting fills the margins, prayers, dates, little notes. A coffee stain marks the corner of the page. This wasn't just a book to her, it was a companion. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. I trace the words with my finger, remembering how Grandma used to quote this verse whenever I was stressed about school or relationships. Back then, I'd smile politely while internally rolling my eyes. What did ancient poetry have to do with modern life? But something about these words feels different tonight. Maybe it's the exhaustion breaking down my usual defenses. Maybe it's the memory of Grandma's unwavering peace, even during her final days in hospice. Whatever it is, I keep reading. 2 hours later, I'm still sitting cross-legged on my closet floor, surrounded by tissues and old photographs. I've been crying, really crying, for the first time since the panic attacks started. Not the frustrated tears of feeling out of control, but something deeper, more cleansing. Between the Psalms and Grandma's margin notes, I'm beginning to see a different perspective on weakness. All my life, I've viewed vulnerability as failure. Every mistake, every limitation was something to overcome or hide. But here, in these pages, there's a radical idea that our weaknesses might actually serve a purpose. I was drawn to one of Grandma's notes. Their failure becomes the exact experience someone else needs to hear. She'd written it beside 2 Corinthians 1:4, which talks about God comforting us so we can comfort others. The thought stops me short. What if my current struggle isn't just a career setback or a personal failure? What if it's something more? Dawn is breaking outside my window when I finally close the Bible. I haven't found all the answers, but something has shifted. The anxiety is still there, but it feels less like an enemy and more like a signpost, pointing me towards something, or someone, I've been too busy to notice. I think about all the other high achievers in my office, hiding their own struggles behind polished presentations and power suits. How many of them are lying awake right now, feeling just as lost as I am? For the first time in weeks, I feel a glimmer of hope beyond just surviving this crisis. Maybe, just maybe, this breaking point isn't the end. Maybe it's the beginning. I crawl into bed as the sun rises, Grandma's Bible still clutched to my chest. The last thing I remember thinking before sleep finally comes is how strange it is that in my moment of greatest weakness, I'm starting to feel stronger than ever before. Samantha's fingers trace the worn edges of her new Bible, pausing at Psalm 62. My soul finds rest in God alone. The words seemed to leap off the page, speaking directly to her weary heart. After weeks of sleepless nights and anxiety-filled days, the simple promise of rest felt like a cool drink in a desert. She'd started attending Riverside Community Church 3 weeks ago, mostly because it was within walking distance of her apartment. That first Sunday, she'd slipped into the back row, prepared to remain anonymous. But Paula, a woman with kind eyes and silver-streaked hair, had other plans. "Would you like to join us for coffee?" Paula had asked after the service, gesturing to a small group gathering near the entrance. Something in her gentle invitation made it impossible for me to give my usual polite refusal. Now, sitting across from Paula at their weekly coffee meeting, Samantha found herself opening up about her struggles. "I've always tried to be perfect," she admitted, stirring her untouched latte. "But lately, I feel like I'm failing at everything. My prayer life is inconsistent. I can't seem to get through a single day without losing my temper at work. And don't even get me started on my thought life." Paula listened thoughtfully, her hands wrapped around her own cup. "You know what's interesting?" she said finally. "Your story reminds me of my own journey. I spent years trying to earn God's approval, thinking if I just tried harder, prayed more, served better, then maybe I'd feel worthy of His love." "What changed?" Samantha asked, leaning forward. "I realized I had it backward." Paula smiled. "Jesus didn't die for us because we were worthy. He died for us because He loved us, even in our unworthiness. That's what grace is, God's love for us at our worst, not our best." Tears welled in Samantha's eyes. "But what about all the stuff I've done?" "Here's something beautiful I've learned," Paula said softly. "Our failures becomes the exact experience someone else needs to hear. Every struggle you're going through right now, God can use that to help someone else who's walking the same path." The words hit Samantha like a gentle thunderbolt. She thought about her perfectionism, her exhausting attempts to maintain a flawless image. How many others were struggling with the same burden? Over the next few weeks, Samantha began to see her relationship with God differently. Instead of treating her Bible reading like a checkbox on her spiritual to-do list, she found herself drawn to Scripture as a love letter from a Father who already approved of her. Her prayers became less about performing and more about honest conversation. One evening, while leading a small group discussion about grace, Samantha shared her journey. "I used to think God's love was conditional on my performance," she admitted, "but now I'm learning that His grace isn't about my perfection, it's about His presence in my imperfection." To her surprise, several women nodded in understanding. One young mom wiped away tears as she confessed her own struggles with feeling inadequate. Another shared how she'd almost walked away from her faith because she couldn't maintain the perfect Christian life she thought was required. "What if," Samantha found herself saying, "our struggles aren't just about us? What if God allows us to walk through these valleys so we can help others find their way to His grace?" The room grew quiet as the truth of those words sank in. Samantha realized that her journey wasn't just about her own transformation. It was about being part of God's bigger story of redemption. Later that night, as she sat on her apartment balcony watching the sunset, Samantha reflected on how far she'd come. The anxiety about perfect performance was still there, but it no longer dominated her thoughts. Instead, she felt a growing peace in knowing that God's love wasn't dependent on her efforts. She opened her Bible to Psalm 62 again, but this time, she read it with new eyes. "My soul finds rest in God alone, not in perfect performance, not in flawless devotions, not in maintaining an immaculate Christian image, just in God alone." A gentle breeze rustled the pages, and Samantha smiled. She was learning that grace wasn't just about being forgiven, it was about being freed to be authentically herself, struggles and all, in the presence of a God who loved her completely. I stood in my office, staring at the wall of achievements that had once defined me. Awards, certifications, news clippings of business successes, my carefully curated shrine to self-worth. But something felt different now. These accolades that had once filled me with pride now seemed strangely hollow. 3 months had passed since that night at Paula's Bible study, where I'd finally stopped running and surrendered my life to Christ. The peace that followed was unlike anything I'd experienced in all my years of striving. It wasn't the fleeting satisfaction of closing a big deal or receiving another industry award. This was deeper, more permanent, a foundation I could actually build upon. My phone buzzed. Mom. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the screen. We hadn't spoken in nearly 2 years, not since that explosive argument about Dad's estate. The hurt still felt fresh. Her accusations about my ruthless handling of the business, my harsh words about her inability to face reality. Both of us, too proud to bend. Lord, I whispered, I don't know how to do this. Paula's words from last week's study echoed in my mind. God's grace doesn't just save us, it transforms how we see others. We love because He first loved us. Taking a deep breath, I answered. Hi, Mom. Samantha. Her voice sounded smaller than I remembered. I wasn't sure you'd pick up. I'm here. The words caught in my throat. I saw your name in the church bulletin, she said. The one at First Baptist. You're helping with their business ministry? Yes, I replied, surprised she knew. We're mentoring small business owners, helping them apply Christian principles to their work. A long pause followed. That doesn't sound like the daughter I knew. I'm not the same person anymore, Mom. I sat down, feeling the weight of everything unsaid between us. I met Jesus, and He's changed, well, everything. Everything? Remember how Dad always said I was just like him? All ambition and sharp edges? I felt tears forming. He was right. I built walls around myself, measured everything by success, including our relationship. Oh, Sam. Mom's voice cracked. I was wrong, Mom. About so many things. The way I handled Dad's estate. I was legally right, but I was cruel. I'm so sorry. The silence that followed felt eternal. Then I heard it, the soft sound of my mother crying. I've missed you, she whispered. I've missed you too. The tears were flowing freely now. God's been teaching me about grace, not just receiving it, but giving it too. I've been holding on to our hurt for so long. Would you? Mom hesitated. Would you like to have coffee sometime? Your old mom would love to hear about this new journey of yours. We made plans for Saturday, and after hanging up, I sat in my office, overwhelmed by God's faithfulness. The wall of achievements caught my eye again, but now I saw them differently. They weren't worthless, they were gifts God could use for His purposes, but they weren't my identity anymore. Later that week, during the business ministry meeting, I shared my testimony with a group of entrepreneurs. Success isn't wrong, I told them, but it makes a terrible foundation. I spent years building my life on achievements, but it was like constructing a skyscraper on sand. True peace came when I finally understood that my worth wasn't in what I did, but in whose I was. One woman, tears in her eyes, approached me afterward. I'm where you were, she admitted. Successful but empty. How did you let go? I smiled, remembering my own journey. I didn't let go. I was caught by a grace bigger than my failures, stronger than my pride, and more reliable than any success I could achieve. And that same grace is waiting for you too. Walking to my car that evening, I thought about my upcoming coffee with Mom. The old Samantha would have prepared a defensive strategy, armed with documentation and justifications, but now I was just grateful for the chance to show her the grace I'd received, to build a new relationship on a foundation that wouldn't shake. My phone buzzed, a text from Paula. How did the ministry meeting go? I typed back, amazing. God's not done with any of us yet. And that was the beautiful truth I was learning in Christ. Transformation wasn't a destination but a journey. Each day brought new opportunities to experience His grace and share it with others. Even my walls of achievement were being transformed, not torn down, but repurposed for His glory. Samantha adjusted her blazer and checked her reflection one last time before heading into the church's small group room. Her women's mentoring group would start in 15 minutes, and she always liked to arrive early to pray and prepare. These Tuesday evening sessions had become the highlight of her week over the past 6 months. As she arranged the chairs in a circle, warmth filled her chest thinking about how far God had brought her. From corporate climber to kingdom builder, it still amazed her sometimes. The transformation in her life since accepting Christ had been remarkable, and now she could help other professional women find the same freedom she had. "Hey Sam," Katie, one of her mentees, walked in carrying 2 coffee cups. "Brought you your usual almond milk latte." "You're the best," Samantha smiled, accepting the coffee. "How was your week?" "Actually," Katie hesitated, "that's something I wanted to talk to you about before everyone else arrives." Samantha gestured to the chairs. "Of course, what's on your mind?" Katie sat down, fidgeting with her cup sleeve. "You know how you've been encouraging me to trust God with my career decisions. Well, I got offered that promotion I was afraid to take." "Katie, that's wonderful." Samantha leaned forward. "See? God works things out when we surrender to Him. Just like we discussed last week." "Right," but Katie looked up, her eyes unexpectedly direct. "Something you said has been bothering me. When you talked about how much better your life is now that you've figured out how to live for God, it felt, I don't know, like you were saying you had all the answers." The words hit Samantha like a splash of cold water. "That's not what I meant at all. I know you mean well," Katie continued gently. "But sometimes it seems like you've replaced striving for corporate success with striving to be the perfect Christian mentor. Like you're still trying to prove yourself, just in a different way." Samantha sat back, her coffee forgotten. Was that true? Had she simply redirected her drive for achievement into spiritual accomplishments? The thought was uncomfortable, but something about it rang true. As other women began filtering in, Samantha's mind raced. She'd been so confident she was living in God's grace now, but was she actually still operating from a place of performance? Her spiritual growth, was it partially pride in disguise? That night, alone in her apartment, Samantha poured out her heart to God through tears. "Lord, I thought I was doing everything right, leading others, serving you, but I've been making it about my own spiritual success, haven't I? I'm still trying to earn approval, just in a different currency." The revelation stung, but with it came a gentle reminder, a whisper of truth she'd somehow forgotten along the way. Jesus hadn't saved her, so she could become a perfect Christian example. He'd saved her to be in relationship with Him, mess and all. Her phone buzzed with a text from Rachel, another woman in her group. "Thank you for being so vulnerable tonight, when you shared what Katie said. It helped me see I've been doing the same thing, trying to earn God's love, instead of just receiving it." Samantha wiped her eyes, smiling despite herself. She'd thought she needed to have all the answers for the women she mentored, but maybe her greatest ministry would come through openly sharing her struggles and pointing to Jesus as the only answer. The next Tuesday, Samantha started group by sharing her revelation. "I've realized something," she began. "I've been acting like I graduated from needing grace, like I figured out this Christian life, and now I can show everyone else how it's done. But the truth is, I need Jesus's grace just as desperately today as I did when I first believed. My identity isn't in being a perfect mentor, it's in being perfectly loved by God, despite my imperfections." She saw heads nodding around the circle, tears in several eyes. So maybe instead of me having all the answers, we can journey together, reminding each other of God's grace when we forget. Because that's the beautiful thing about Jesus. His grace doesn't require us to have it all figured out. It just requires us to keep coming back to Him, again and again. As the women shared that night, there was a new openness, a deeper authenticity. Samantha felt lighter somehow. In admitting her ongoing need for grace, she'd found a truer kind of freedom than all her striving had ever achieved. I stared at the email on my screen, reading it for the 5th time. The promotion I'd been pursuing for months, the senior marketing director position, had gone to Jessica, my colleague who'd been with the company 2 years less than me. My stomach churned as I recalled how I'd brushed her off last week when she tried to collaborate on the Miller account. "Lord," I whispered, closing my eyes, "I don't understand. I've worked so hard." The past year had been a journey of learning to trust Jesus, but old habits died hard. Even after accepting Christ, I still found myself falling into familiar patterns, pushing harder, trying to prove my worth, keeping others at arm's length to maintain my professional edge. Pastor Mark's words from Sunday's sermon echoed in my mind. Pride builds walls, humility builds bridges. I'd nodded along, not realizing how soon God would use those words to speak directly to my heart. Later that afternoon, Jessica stopped by my cubicle. Instead of the smugness I expected, her expression held genuine concern. "Sam, do you have a minute?" My first instinct was to make an excuse, to protect my wounded pride. But someone, nudged me to say yes. Over coffee in the break room, Jessica surprised me. "I almost didn't take the position," she admitted. "I know how much you wanted it. Why did you?" The words came out softer than I intended, because 3 people from different departments approached me, saying they thought I could help build bridges between teams. She paused. "Sam, you're brilliant at what you do. Your strategies are amazing. But sometimes, excellence can become a wall." The truth in her words stung, but not in the way criticism usually did. This felt different, like conviction rather than condemnation. That evening, I sat in my favorite reading chair, Bible open to Philippians 2. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility value others above yourselves. Tears slipped down my cheeks as I recognized how my pursuit of excellence had become a shield, a way to keep others at a distance while maintaining control. "Jesus," I prayed, "I've been doing it again, trying to earn what you've already freely given. Help me understand what true humility looks like." The answer came through an unexpected source. The next day, my colleague Tim stopped by with a technical question about a presentation. In the past, I would have quickly solved his problem, making sure he knew exactly how much he needed my expertise. Instead, I heard myself saying, "Why don't we work through this together? I'd love to hear your ideas too." The surprise and relief on his face spoke volumes. Over the next hour, our collaboration produced something better than either of us could have created alone. More importantly, I discovered the joy of using my skills to elevate others rather than myself. As weeks passed, I noticed subtle changes. Team meetings became more collaborative. Junior colleagues started coming to me for mentoring, not just answers. Even my relationship with Jessica transformed from awkward tolerance to genuine friendship. One morning, reviewing quarterly results, I realized our department's overall performance had improved significantly. "It's because you've helped create an environment where everyone feels valued," Jessica commented. "Your excellence isn't a wall anymore. It's a door others feel welcome to walk through." I thought about how Jesus, the King of Kings, had humbled himself to serve, to teach, to love. He didn't diminish his excellence by sharing it. He multiplied it through others. My drive for excellence wasn't wrong. It was a gift he'd given me. But now it was becoming a gift I could share, rather than a weapon I wielded. The irony wasn't lost on me. In loosening my grip on control, in choosing humility over pride, I'd found a deeper satisfaction than any promotion could provide. God hadn't asked me to abandon excellence. He'd shown me how to redefine it through his eyes. For whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and whoever humbles himself will be exalted. Matthew 23:12. The verse took on new meaning now. True exaltation wasn't about climbing higher than others, but about lifting others up along the way. Grace, I was learning, wasn't just about receiving God's forgiveness. It was about extending that same grace to others, about using our gifts to serve rather than to shine. And in that serving, somehow, his light shone through more brightly than ever.